Hey there friends, if you're lucky enough to be gardening in Massachusetts, June is when your garden can really explode with life. The days are long, the soil's warm, and the sun's finally out for good. But here's the catch. Massachusetts covers zones 5A to 7A, and that still matters because some of the crops we're talking about today take over 100 days to mature. And depending on when in June you're getting started, that could mean the difference between a full harvest and a last-minute frost surprise that kills everything. I'll show you a map now. Find your town, lock in your zone, and keep that in mind as we go along. And hey, if this video gets 200 likes, I'll know that you want more zone-specific gardening videos, so don't forget to hit that like button. There are three major factors contributing to what and when crops can be planted outside, and that goes for all year long. It's warmth, light level, and days to maturity. In June, we have it all. The danger of frost is long behind us, the days are longer, and the soil is warm, and the plants are in full swing. But that doesn't mean it's too late to start new crops. Actually, June is one of the best times to succession plant, filling gaps in your beds and setting yourself up for harvest all the way through the fall. You're not going backwards, it's all the way this way. Let's start with warm weather crops that you can still plant in June. Beans, French bush pole beans. These thrive in the heat and you can direct sow them right into your beds or start them indoors. They'll sprout quickly in the warm soil and can be harvested in as little as 55 days. Some gardeners plant a couple of staggered plantings every 2 weeks to keep fresh beans coming along. Summer squash and zucchini. If you haven't planted these yet, no problem. They love the warmth and they grow quickly. Sow them directly into the garden and you'll be picking tender squash in just a couple of months. Cucumbers. June is still a great time to get cucumbers going. They grow fast in the warm soil, and be sure to trellis them to keep things tidy and make harvests easier. Take a look at some of the cucumbers that I started a couple of weeks ago. They don't look great, and I think it's because of the cooler May nights that we have been having here in Mass. I would bet if I started over, the plants would beat these maturing seedlings that are already in the ground. I plan on training my plants with a string fixed to a landscape staple and an overhead wire. As the vine grows, I will wrap it around the string, just like what I'm doing with my tomatoes now. Okay, now we have sweet corn. If you miss planting corn in May, don't sweat it. June plantings can still produce great results here in Massachusetts. Just make sure you plant your corn in blocks rather than in rows, which helps with good pollination and better harvests. The best gardeners I know, and there are a lot of you out there who are way more experienced than me, plant multiple successions of corn to stagger the harvests over time. I'm starting my second wave of plantings this week. Last month, I planted sweet corn, and now I'm going to be sowing popping corn. It's important to stagger different types by at least 3 weeks, and this avoids cross-pollination, which can mess up the unique traits each variety has. Melons and pumpkins. While these take a bit longer to mature, June is still a fine time to direct sow them if you have room. Just remember, they'll sprawl, so give them space. And they'll soak up every available nutrient that you have. So make sure they have their own space. Unless you're doing something that we'll talk about later in the video. Okay, tomatoes and peppers. When I first started planning this video, I wasn't going to include them. Not on this list anyway. Gardeners usually start these in April, and for good reason. Tomatoes and peppers can take anywhere from 100 to over 160 days to harvest from seed. On June 1st, we have about 150 frost-free days left, so it's definitely cutting it close. Early in the season, I wasn't planning on planting super hot peppers. Over the past few years, I just wasn't interested in that level of scorching heat, but then I watched a Hulu show on chili heads and pepper breeding, and the fire was reignited. My excitement grew even more after watching Shahina and Johnny Scoville on YouTube. So here we are, putting late season sowings to the test. I ordered 3 varieties that I plan to breed this year. If you're interested in following my pepper breeding and late season sowing projects, subscribe and turn on post notifications. This is going to be a close call. We'll either celebrate it together if I can pull it off, or you can watch me lose it all overnight. That was a bit off the rails, but if you're interested in following this journey, please comment fire, even if you don't usually comment on videos. I'm still deciding whether to keep these pepper breeding videos on this channel or to create a separate channel just for peppers and breeding projects. One last note. When you're selecting late season varieties to plant, consider the fruit size and the heat level. The larger the tomato, the longer it takes to mature, and the hotter the pepper, the longer it takes to ripen. If you're watching this in late June or even early July, stick with a cherry tomato and be aware that it might not work out. But hey, I think it's worth a shot. Hey, leafy greens and successions. June is also a great time to keep your salad greens going. Lettuce can bolt quickly in the summer heat, so for heat-tolerant varieties like Jericho or Butter Crunch, sow small amounts every couple of weeks to avoid overwhelming harvests and keep a steady supply. Swiss chard and kale, both of these leafy greens, can handle the heat and keep producing well into the fall. Sow them directly in the garden now for a strong midsummer harvest. Or you could start them indoors, which is something that I do. I wouldn't start kale outside, just because it makes sense. Starting in seeds is controlled. When you plant it outside, you're like, was it here? Did I plant the seeds over there? And you just don't know. It becomes a mess. It's so much neater and organized to start your seedlings inside. Okay, beets, turnips, and kohlrabi. If you're still looking to fill some spaces in your beds this month, don't forget about these root crops. Well, kohlrabi is not a root crop, but they do just fine in early summer warmth, and they're a great way to sneak in other harvests before the real heat of July sets in. Beets, sow them directly where you want to grow them. They're quick to germinate in the warm soil and can start harvesting baby greens early while you wait for the roots to fill in. Turnips, same deal as the beets. Directly sow them, keep them moist, and they'll come up fast and mature quickly too, even faster than the beets. If you're growing a storage variety, they'll get beautiful roots for fall, but even summer turnips can be tender and sweet. Okay, kohlrabi, I already mentioned this, but this veggie is super underrated. It's actually in the brassica family, like kale and broccoli. But it grows more like a root crop. Sow it now for crisp, crunchy harvest in about 6 weeks. Okay, now we have carrots. Here's a little trick that I'm using this year. I'm sowing my carrots in between my garlic plants. Garlic and carrots are great companions. Garlic helps deter pests that love to nibble on carrots, and the carrots don't mind the little bit of shade from the garlic's leaves early on. The magic happens as the season progresses. Once the carrots are mature, enough to need more room, it's also time to pull out the garlic. This frees up the space just as the carrots are starting to bulk up. It's a super easy way to save space and maximize your harvest without the need for extra beds. I find carrots to be the most challenging of these root crops because their germination takes a long time and the seeds need constant moisture in order to sprout. One trick I like is to use a plastic mulch or even just lay a board over the row after sowing. Here's how I do it. I make a trough, I flood it with water, then sprinkle the seeds down thick. After that, I lightly bury them and cover the row. This helps hold in moisture and keeps your seeds from drying out. You can always thin the carrots later once they've grown up and are strong. And trust me, this little trick can save you a lot of frustration in getting a good even strand of carrots. If you're still here, you're among my favorite viewers. This is a long video and your support keeps me going. Just by you being here, it keeps me going. Drop a comment saying favorite, just so I know that you're here. Okay, herbs and flowers. Basil, parsley, dill. Basil absolutely loves the warm weather and will take off if you plant it now. Parsley and dill can also be sown directly in June. Dill in particular can be a great companion plant to attract beneficial insects like lacewings and ladybugs. I've been finding a lot of ladybugs in my garden. I haven't put them there, so that's a good sign. Okay, marigolds. If you're planting tomatoes or have already planted tomatoes, adding marigolds nearby can help deter pests like the whitefly and add some color to your beds, which never hurt anybody. You can even pick them and give them to somebody that you love. Okay, tips for hot weather success. First on the list is watering. June can bring some serious hot spells, so keep your soil evenly moist. A good deep watering once or twice a week is better than frequent shallow watering. Set up a drip irrigation system. It is by far the best hands-off method, but there is a bit of first-time setup. And comment water in the comments below if you wouldn't mind seeing me explain how to rig up an automatic drip system. If the heat gets real bad or if water is scarce, there is something else that you can do. Mulching. Add a layer of mulch around your plants to help conserve moisture and keep roots cool. I like using shredded leaves or grass clippings. Just make sure that they're chemical free and seedless if you can get it, because that really helps. Plants like squash can also act as a mulch if you're growing a tall plant like sunflowers or corn. But be careful, the squash will extract every bit of nutrients that you have in your garden, so feed it heavily. Speaking of feeding, many warm weather crops are heavy feeders. A balanced organic fertilizer like a 5-5-5 every few weeks will keep them growing strong. And it's a lot simpler than knowing when to apply a lopsided fertilizer like bone meal or feather meal. If you want to get more experience on identifying when to use each of those, which can make the difference between a great garden and an outstanding one, be sure to subscribe to this channel and check out my weekly garden update playlist. I go into detail what I'm doing with each of my plants so that you can see what to do and what not to do with your garden, because trust me, I make plenty of mistakes. Now, here's a fun project that I mention a lot on this channel, and that is the Three Sisters planting method. June is the great time to try out the Three Sisters if you haven't yet. And this method uses corn as a support to the beans that fix nitrogen in the soil, and then the squash to shade the ground and keep it moist. If you've already got your corn up and growing, plant your beans and squash now to complete the trio. It's a beautiful, low maintenance way to garden, and one of my favorite summer projects. There's a lot of videos out there, so thank you for choosing this one. If you found this guide helpful, hit that like button and subscribe so that you don't miss a single update. And remember, if this video hits 200 likes, I'll know that you want even more zone-specific planting tips, so let me know you're enjoying this. Also, just as a reminder, check out my week-to-week garden update playlist. I think that you'll really enjoy that if you liked this video. There's always something new popping up.